WMBC.
Welcome to this morning of Millionaire brand creation. I'm super excited to have a good friend of mine here that we're going to be interviewing in a minute. This show is really about creating your own $1 million brand through collaboration, through information, and through learning success stories of others. So this gentleman that I'm bringing on, we actually met at GrowthCon 10X. Grant Cardone, super follower, and a man who's implemented many of his tactics and taken him to the next level. None other than Tran, the multi-million-dollar man from Colorado. He is a past Marine. He was with the Marines for close to 10 years in their counterintelligence unit. Also, what is it, Lead Six Sigma intelligence. He basically taught the Marines how to increase their business processes. And he got in the real estate game in 2015, which he'll talk about. The VRBO business, Airbnb, did a lot of fix and flips. And then also the food business, which is really exciting in Colorado, which we'll talk about as well. So without further ado, love to introduce you to my friend, the myth, the legend, Tran, the multi-million-dollar man. How are you, my friend?
How's it going, Michael? It's excited to be on this show today. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for having me, or thanks for being here, I should say. Thanks for having me too and watching all of this. But let's deep dive into your past. And I know before you came on, we wanted you to talk about your history. You know, tell us. Let's go back to the beginning in time. And how did you grow up? What was your life like?
Well, I like to recently I actually just started looking at like the past and origins, and I'm real big on like core values and leadership. But I was born and raised in Colorado. My parents escaped Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and I grew up. My parents were just trying to figure it out. My dad was an extremely hard worker. He worked from like pizza delivery driver to IHOP, and impressively, he graduated with an engineer degree in 3 years
Hmm.
at one of the state colleges.
Wow.
Um, my mom and dad both had 8 kids, so I'm one of 8 of them. So I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters. And, just watching my parents and how they were with an entrepreneur, from owning a small grocery store, from, just doing other different business ventures. And something my dad always taught me was, you should learn a little bit about everything, so then you're more inclined in different areas. When people say, that new saying that you see on TikTok is like a jack of all trades, so that's something that I've kind of learned, and it's kind of built me to who I am today and how I was successful in the Marine Corps and how I'm building even more success today.
So, what do you
So
think was in you at like a young age that wanted you to be an entrepreneur? Because I remember when we were in Miami together, you have like a huge zest for success and it's in your blood, it's in your DNA. And I think that's how we all connected. Tell me, like, what was it as a young kid that made you want to be a success?
it's funny that you say that, because the way that I learned, I was never good in school. It's
Mm,
because the way I learned, I needed to learn the details about things, right? Like I needed to ask tons of questions. I needed to ask the reason why we were doing things. And I was never successful in anything in school. I had to kind of find ways, kind of cheat myself way through school. And, my dad was begging and praying for me and saying, hey, you know what, just graduate high school. I like to call myself the black unicorn out of all the unicorns in my family. But, you know, it's the, it's the truth. I had a difficult time, growing up. I was in a bad neighborhood, and how Colorado used to be before, there was a lot of small gangs. So you really need to have a little bit of thick skin. So, I grew up in the Sloan's Lake area when it wasn't that attractive. And now there's like multi-million-dollar houses in there. And I just saw my parents progress over time. And, I didn't really know it, but my parents were real estate investors. And there were terms that they never knew, like seller carry, or learning how to craft creative deals, and they were doing it. People
mm,
liked them and the way that they actually craft their deals, or how they would actually borrow money at high percentages and just pay that back. But they built wealth for themselves, and I didn't recently learn that until I started investing in real estate. And my dad is like, okay, well, I used to do this and I'm doing this now. And now I'm like, wow, I really learned. My dad really built me to who I am. And I always lean on my mom, because when it's hard times, you always got to go talk to your mom, and then from there they make you feel so much better. So growing up, I've always been an entrepreneur. So when I was in my teens, I think I was 14 was when I threw my first party, because some of my friends throw some of the biggest parties, with like Millennium and all the big parties at like the football stadium. So I always saw that and I was inspired by that. And I asked him and I was like, I want to do this too. So I rented out his venue and I got all high school kids and I completely packed it up. And then I started renting out the Fillmore. And then from there, all my other friends convinced me to go back to school. And then I dropped out. 2007, I moved to the Bay Area and attempted to start a landscaping company because I didn't believe in the recession. That went bottoms up. And then at that point, I was hanging out with a bunch of Marines. So my uncle was a Marine, uh, with one of my aunts that she married, and really over time, I was just talking smack to them and just saying, hey, you know what? Like you can't recruit two or three people. And then they kind of challenged me. During that time, I was actually working at Nordstrom's doing sales for like fine jewelry, watches, and some other things. And then one day they looked over at me. They're like, hey, you want to be a mission maker? So they kind of planted that seed and they pitched me a soft way. And I said, you know what? Um, let's do it. And something else I missed, I was going to actually join the police department. And I kind of turned that down and I said, I'm going to join the Marine Corps for the experience.
Hmm.
And it's been a great journey. And it was one of the most stressful things that I've done, doing some of the training that I did. But it built me to who I was
So
today.
walk me through, how was it joining the Marine Corps in the beginning, and how do you think some of those things help prepare you for business? Because I don't know if you knew this about me, but my mother's side had a real strong lineage in the army actually. So my great grandfather was a brigadier general. My grandfather was a colonel in the Air Force. My dad was at Vietnam, and my uncle was an MP in Vietnam. So I have huge respect for people that have served. But what are some of the talents that you learned from those guys and what you did that served you well in business?
Well, the Marine Corps is very interesting. So when I first joined, I had high expectations because everybody said that the Marine Corps was the number one branch. It was the hardest branch. So when I came in, even from boot camp, I thought boot camp was going to be more like much harder.
Mm.
And that's the mindset that I've like kind of taken throughout life, is that I kind of set the high bar of it being harder, so then you mentally prepare. And really going through boot camp and through the Marine Corps, it's more of a mental challenge than a physical challenge.
Mm.
Because like I tell people all the time is that there's people that run ultra marathons and their bodies could run 100 miles. So when I went through boot camp, I thought it was easy. I thought that we needed an additional month in there. So I always played a leadership role. And funny story that I'm going to kind of backtrack is when I was in elementary school, and I always talk about this, I would always have the ability to read people's body language. And I remember these two girls fighting on the playground. I pulled them under and I kind of like mentored both of them, and then they ended up being friends. And I remember one of the teachers seeing that was all like, huh, that was impressive. So leadership to me in my blood, and what I've learned through the Marine Corps, is extremely important trait. Right? I always ask people, what is leadership? Most people don't understand what leadership is. They're like, okay, lead by example. Well, showing people that you could, do something, or someone you could rely on. I had to do deep research probably about 7 years ago. And even when you Googled it, it didn't have the right definition. And leadership is the ability to inspire people to any cause,
Mm.
right? Whatever argument you talk about, but when you talk about even Hitler or, Martin Luther King or you, Michael, it's like we all inspire people. When you guys do this show, or when Matt's behind the camera filming, or when your team is going out and speaking to people, you guys are inspiring people. You guys are leaders. And that's the one thing that I always taught people, is that there's two types of leaders. There's leaders that lead by intimidation, and there's leaders that lead by inspiration.
100%
And then,
agree. Yeah, it's very strong.
yeah, so that's the big thing in the Marine Corps was I learned how to be an extremely good leader, because they have like the 13 leadership traits that I still teach my team today. They taught me about core values, right? So
Do you
for our
remember
core
what those are?
values,
Do you remember what those are for the listeners?
oh, absolutely, is honor, courage, and commitment, right?
Oh, I like that. Honor, courage, and
So
commitment. I love that.
Yeah. So for my team, our core values is courage, commitment, and integrity. And then we have other values of, consistently improving in ourselves. And, same thing like Brian Dawson and all the other guys talk about is, how do you care about your team's personal, professional, and financial growth? And that's extremely important. But yeah, through the Marine Corps, I learned about leadership and I learned about like logistics. And the way I ran it was like, how do I run like an Amazon? Because I have millions of dollars that I can spend and operate. And anywhere from small units from 30 to like thousands of people, how do you lead a team like that? And I got tons of practice on like a corporate level, from interacting with comptrollers, from making $1 million purchases, from doing multi-million dollar savings of events. Because Lean Six Sigma is basically a way of you improving processes. Like
Mm,
Motorola is a Sigma Six, which means that it's cheaper for them to replace a product than to repair it, because that's how efficient their manufacturing process is. So it's the same way in real estate, right? Like the real estate teams out there is that we have to set a business system in place and follow it. And how do we streamline that process? Because there's only one of Michael, there's only one of Vu. So then how do we systemize it so that we could grow a bit more? Something else that I learned too was when I was doing training for 1 year for counterintelligence, human intelligence, which is learning how to be a spy, because you're learning how to recruit people. You're learning about interrogations. You're learning about writing briefs. You're learning about, like, how do you sincerely convince somebody to do something, right? And
mm,
risk someone's life. The truth is that I really started comprehensively learning how to read in my early 20s,
mm,
because I was never a reader. But I wanted it so bad that I started reading all these legal documents and all of these other doctrines that they had for interrogations, or for, because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So it made me much sharper, because for an entire year when I was in Okinawa, Japan, really some days I would only get an hour of sleep. So from like Monday through Friday, I'd get an hour of sleep. I'd catch up on my sleep Saturday and Sunday, and it was one of the most stressful things, but like, I'm so thankful for it, because now I'm much more sharper the way that I communicate. Because one of my mentors always taught me is, if it leaves your mouth, you don't own it. So you got to be very careful with
mm,
what you say.
mm. That's yeah. Well, Brandon,
So
you know Brandon Dawson's quote, right? What you think is what you say is what you do, and what you do becomes your legacy. So that's very impactful what you're talking about. And I think, having met you only a few times, it's almost that adage. Do you ever watch Wolf of Wall, or not Wolf of Wall Street? Uh, what is it? Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. The second one with Michael Douglas.
no, I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, you got to watch it. There's some funny lines in there, right? And one is, a fisherman always sees another fisherman from afar. So when you're a business-minded person, when you're an intellectual person, when you're someone that commands the room and commands the processes like you are, even instantly, I think you and I were connected to each other in that way, because we're like, wow, business is in these guys' DNA. That's why we wanted to connect. And I deeply respect, our conversation that we had on the way to the airport, because I loved listening to your entrepreneurial journey, and I'm sure a lot of people watching in want to hear it as well. So, how did you transition from that military mindset to becoming a real estate entrepreneur and becoming successful? Because that's an interesting transition.
Yeah, so 2015, that's when I invested in my first piece of real estate, and I really need to thank my mom for that, because she's like, you just need to buy something and own it.
Mm,
I wish, knowing now that I started earlier, and it's just learning. That piece of real estate was just sitting there and just making me money, and it was appreciating. But it wasn't until I got out the Marine Corps, because the truth is, to all the listeners, is that anybody could do it. I've only been out of the Marine Corps for a little bit over 3 years.
mm,
It's not, a a long time frame, and I always look at business and opportunities in three different things. It's how much money you make, it's who you connect with, and how many people you help.
let's say
So
that
when you
again
focus,
so people can hear that. I love that.
yeah, so it's how much money you make, who you connect with, and how many people you help. Because all those pieces is that the currency of being connected with great people is more than any type of value of monetary money you could
I'm
actually talk
so
about.
glad you said that, because literally the thing I've been preaching to most people is, most people who don't have money think money is the ultimate currency. And I said the ultimate currency on this world stage now more than ever is social currency, the ability to connect with people. You can connect with people, you can make an endless amount of money. Good,
Absolutely. And
great
then
point.
the third thing is how many people you help, because
100%.
people and the people that you help are a direct reflection of us. So the
Mm,
people that are around us, that's the reason why, everybody part of my team, it's almost a requirement to invest. It's almost a
mm.
requirement to have self development because, that's how we need to strive. How do we help out each other? At the end of the day, like what really matters, how do you leave this earth? So is it okay if I kind of share a story, Michael?
Yeah, no, please do.
So I'm really big on core values. I'm really big on origins, and that's the reason why we live in the best effing country in the entire world, right? 100%. So I always tell this story to people, and even when I'm coaching people on like raising money and doing different things when they're doing like their crypto funds or NFT funds, or when they're doing their real estate funds or venture funds, is that I always ask them about their why, and they kind of have a generic why of I do it for my family. I do it because I want to live a better life. But the United States is a very young country. We're only 245 years old. So what happened in the East Coast when this country was first founded was ships were coming in, and what happened was that people were carrying big trunks off the actual ship. And who built this country? It was entrepreneurs like everybody that's listening right now, or people that want to become. I'm such a big promoter of being an entrepreneur. Just start a business, start a side gig, do anything and learn it because it empowers you. And it's what's built this country. It's because that's what the land of opportunity really means. So when you ask people, what is the land of opportunity? They're like, oh, yeah, the opportunity for jobs, the opportunity for this. No, it's the opportunity that a guy like me with no knowledge has the resources to go out there and start a business. Go online and start a business and go on Fiverr and create a logo and virtually start a business within a half an hour if you know the processes, right? And that's the reason why like I live. And I tell this story too is that my business partner for the mortgage company, what happens is that he went over to China when he was doing consulting for manufacturers. And he said that when the board members and all these billionaires were sitting in a room, they would go through their short term goals.
Mm,
And what blew his mind and kind of stuck with me was that their short term goals was 100 years,
wow. Yeah.
right? So if you say those 100 years, Michael, it's like that made me just realize that I got to sacrifice my life to build a dynasty because China's been around a lot longer. So I want to bring the dynasty mentality to the United States. How do I,
Yeah.
how do I get with families like yours or other families that are building this wealth and be like the Rockefellers or the Mark Cubans of the world? And how do we build a dynasty? Because what happens, like I tell parents all the time when their kids want to be ambitious and do things, I say, let them do it because when you die, they're going to take your money anyways and they're going to blow it. So you might as well see where they're going and guide them in the right direction. And I looked at my dad one day. I told him, I said, I don't want your money or mom's money when you guys are dead. I want to build this together.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do this together. Let's figure this out together. So that's the one thing that I really want to leave is that think about what the land of opportunity is, and think about those core values and what really built this country, and go out there and just start your business.
No, you hit on a really good point. I think Grant, because I know you're a big proponent of his teachings, and one thing that what I really realized is when you get to that next echelon in your life, whether it's monetarily, mental, physical, you have to give something substantial up in order to get something else. And so many people don't realize that in order to go to the next level, you have to unleash something within yourself that's holding you back. And it requires self-discipline, it requires delayed gratification, it requires a lot of things that I think people are not willing to do within themselves. But when you look at true greatness, you hit on a good word, legacy, the power of collaboration, the power of people coming together to create bigger than something bigger than we could create ourselves. And so, when you'd had that conversation with your mom, I'm curious because I had a conversation with my mom recently, and we were talking about marriage, which is always a heated topic. Because you're not married, right?
No, no, I'm
Yeah.
not married.
Yeah. And so I was going to go down that path, and then I hit the brakes, backed up, and I said, something really poignant entered my mind. As I said, marriage is the ultimate collaboration, right? It is the ultimate partnership. And I said, you got to realize just because you love someone doesn't necessarily mean you're in love with their choices. And in order to be successful in life, you have to fully love your partners, your business partners' choices, because those choices, whether we like it or not, are going to reflect back on our community success. And she's like, that's actually a good point. I said, yeah, I mean, because just because you love a buddy or a friend or a girl or a guy doesn't mean that you're like totally in sync with their choices. So when I look at your life, what are some things that you gave up as a person in your 20s to make you a millionaire in, let's say, your late 20s or your 30s? Like, what were some of the things that were delayed that gave you that gratification of creating your legacy later?
Getting rid of your old friends.
Mm,
I think that's the one thing is really going out there and exposing yourself. And I know it's tough for people that just first got started because they feel like they don't have a track record and that they shouldn't, that they're not good enough to be around certain groups.
mm,
And I think I just had to, people have the misconception of what being humble really means. And this is what I always tell people is that a professional athlete never goes on a field with a losing spirit, but you have to be humble enough to learn
mm,
because people mistaken, what confidence and cockiness really means. But every entrepreneur, every professional has to have that confidence to go on a field and say that they're going to win because we're going to figure it out. But at the same time, be humble enough to let down the guard to be able to learn from anybody. And I think that when I first started, it was extremely intimidating being around successful people, but I just kept on learning. I took big risk. Like the first fix and flip that I did, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I had no idea about permits. I had no idea about aluminum wiring. I had no idea about anything when it came to construction. But that was the best experience. And every bad experience, I think, is the best experience. So the one thing I would say I needed to sacrifice was my old friends,
mm.
and just build new circles and make more room. Like Elena wrote a great book about, empire, right? How do you have that dining room table and who do you want to sit at that table? Because you're either building your castle or you're either destroying it. And I still use that every single day. I'm like, is this person helping me or, are they destroying what I'm trying to build?
Yeah.
And, it's very difficult to have friends, family, communities to convince you otherwise because the truth is that majority of people are skeptics and I'm not a skeptic. I just go in and say, yeah, sure, why not? Because you could always adjust or you could always fall back. So why not see what's in that dark room and it might be something amazing, right?
Have you ever found, I mean, I've always found this where the more you do, almost like the more time is made, if that makes sense. You learn how to do and multitask so many different things at the same time where before you almost thought it to be impossible. Have you found that in your life?
Yeah. When I have expectations for like my director of operations or my director of business, like improvement, what I start to learn is that when I task somebody with something, it takes them so much longer, but I got to tear back because I know how to be efficient.
Mm,
Like I know how to be much more efficient. Because like you said, Michael, it's like, how long is it going to take you and how much money is it going to cost you to figure it out yourself? Why not just
mm,
join a team? Why not just join a team of people that already have the formula, exchange informations, or maybe put that sweat equity in and learn the process? Like that's what I did when I spoke on stages. I had an extremely good speaker, and he was a mentor of mine. So he was a board member with huge companies, and I got to connect with a lot of people. And I did it completely for free. It was probably about $100,000 of expenses for the year for flying, hotels, but that whole year time frame accelerated my growth in business, accelerated my growth in understanding about people and business and promoting parties and everything that I've learned today. And I'm still a student. I want to learn more. Like sometimes when I don't learn enough, I kind of get depressed. Like I was like, I need to
totally.
learn more.
Totally.
See?
Well, it's almost weird. Like, I mean, for me, I look at it as shots of adrenaline. Like when I see business-minded people like you, I get fired up and excited, and I want to be better within myself. And when I see a personality trait where there's a defeatist negativity that like permeates out of someone's body, I'm like, wake up. Like our lives are so finite and so small. We're so, minuscule in the idea of the world, right? But we have those talents, we have those abilities. And it takes other people to take that from ourselves and give it to the world, right? So if you were to talk to entrepreneurs right now that are listening in, maybe they're starting out their career in the real estate business or beyond, or maybe they want to reinvent their career in their 40s and 50s. What are some things that you would recommend that brought you success?
Well, so I look at things from a macro view and then a micro view. So if we just look at it in general standpoints, I would say learn about investing in real estate and learn about creating a business and just get started, right? You
Mm,
hear it all the time and you really don't understand it until you get started. Like you said before, when I built millions of dollars of real estate, it's because I had to learn, but I had to do it and I had to adjust because it's just like anything in business, there's business cycles that you need to adjust. Like when I had to pour about $30,000 worth of expenses when I'm like, oh shit, like how the hell am I going to do this? What did I do? I had to adjust to the Airbnb VRBO model. And when you start collecting $40,000 of cash flow a month, you're like, wow, this is the easiest money. Like you kind of feel guilty. Like I feel
right.
guilty that I'm not doing maybe enough decorations for my houses or, not doing enough, advertisement, but it just becomes easier and easier. And then you pour that money into something else. But what I would say is, really learn about articulating and communicating with people. I think
mm,
we all have a story to share, but when you're scared or when you don't want to share what people call booster yourself, what you're doing is that you're being extremely selfish.
mm,
And that's what I tell people. It's like we all have something to share. We have a story, so share it. Don't be scared of making a video on social media because you're selfish and you don't want to make it seem like you're not trying to show off. Really, at the end of the day, that's being selfish because you're inspiring somebody. Or when you're scared about doing something, sometimes I'm scared, but I'm like, you know what? This is a selfish feeling that I'm feeling, and I
mm-hmm,
need to switch that around. And need to not be selfish. Like when someone tells me, "Hey, I want you to do this," and it scares the crap out of me. And at that point, I'm like, "Let's just do it." Or when you're trying to pick up a woman, right? Because I know you're big on like the dating scene, Michael, and you're coaching and mentoring people. It's like, why not take that shot? Because you might provide some sort of happiness to that person, but you're being selfish by not taking that initiative and going up and telling that person, which is what I teach all my employees. The number one easiest line is, I think you're a pretty cool person. I want to get to know you
mm.
and just see how they
I
respond, right?
You
That's
know
the
it's so
easiest pickup
funny,
line you could
Boo.
do.
I don't know if you've read my book, but literally everyone wants to know the best pickup line. And literally word for word, I said if you're a guy or a girl, all you got to do is go up to a group of people and say, "You guys seem really interesting. I wanted to introduce myself." It's exactly the same thing you just said because it works. It's genuine.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
genuine and you're not feeling awkward. You're not trying to pick up a corny pickup line.
Yeah.
And, people see that genuineness and they're like, oh, well, you seem pretty cool too. And it doesn't make you feel weird. So just take the shot.
But you hit an interesting point, and I think that point is you are selfish by not going out there and sharing your gifts with the world. I was having dinner with a good friend of mine who's actually, I believe, wealthier than me, but he's real under the radar. Jewish community, wants to get married in the Jewish community, is looking for a bride, yet he's doing it in a humble, and I say that word loosely, stealthy way. And I said, you got to understand, you are very successful in the commercial real estate space. You have made millions on top of millions of dollars. You should be teaching courses. You should be helping people within your faith community about what made you successful so you can extend that olive branch to get other people at your level. And I said, in turn, you're going to meet your bride because she's going to see you as a benevolent person, as someone who's kind, and as someone who is an influencer helping those people around you. He says, I never looked at it like that. I said, it's your duty. it's not just a prescription, it's your duty as a person who's successful to help others become successful too. And I'm like, that's what I've always thought. I mean, do you feel that way or?
Absolutely. Before I was speaking on stages across the world from like London to New York to Florida, and sometimes we'd be in three cities in one day. My mentor was like, why don't you like promote on your social media? And I
Yeah.
sat there and I thought about it, and I actually woke up one Sunday morning and I was like, I'm being extremely selfish.
Hmm.
I have something to share. And that's when I just started freely activating my social media, started freely, communicating and talking to people, getting interviews and just spending time because internally that's how you feel, but people want to hear these stories. People want to hear these successes. People want to know that it's possible. But if you're sitting there and you're trying to be stealthy
Right.
and you're not trying to share your secrets, or you're trying to like wait until you're successful until you start doing it, like it like why you're not being humble or you're not being genuine and authentic. You're trying to put up a face that's not really you.
So here's another question I think ties into it is I have a belief that all super successful people either have a deep-seated fear or a deep-seated insecurity that they're trying to fill. In that respect, what's your biggest fear and what do you think is your biggest insecurity?
It's funny. I had a conversation with somebody about this. I said entrepreneurs are the most insecure people ever
Totally.
because we're always trying to prove ourselves.
That's right. That's right.
We go to something, we're like, okay, well, we could do it, but at the same time, our hearts are beating and we can't sleep, and we're trying to figure out how to scrap things together. And I think you're absolutely right. So I think my number one fear right now is letting my team down.
Mm,
Because I believe that my director of ops or my whole entire team deserves so much more wealth, and I wish I could pay them three, four, five times more than I can. But in stages of your life, it has to be that progression. But just letting my team down, because when you're a leader, so many people are relying on you. They're relying on your vision. They're relying on your dreams. They're relying on the things that you're saying that you're going to do. So every day, that's what drives me. That's what makes me wake up in the morning, or keep on going or connecting with people. It's because I don't want to let my team down. Like I don't want to let my community down. I don't want to let you down, Michael. It's like you inviting me on this show. It's like I'm a direct reflection of you. So I have to have tight core values, and I have to uphold a high standard for us because we're connected,
right.
right? So I think that that's my biggest insecurity. And my biggest fear, I've asked myself that these last couple of weeks. I don't know what I'm scared of. I think as an entrepreneur and as people in general, we have to kind of be delusional if we want to be extremely successful.
Say that again.
Like
I like that.
you have to be extremely delusional when you want to be successful. Like
Yeah.
Elon Musk, he's like, I'm going to start flying ships up. Well, you have to go to school for that. He's probably like, screw that. So the more delusional you are, it doesn't matter. Just be delusional about what you do, and that's where you get extreme success. Because what if it does happen?
Right. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, one of my favorite anecdotes is the story of Ralph Lauren.
Little bit. Uh huh.
Yeah, so he grew up in poverty, and his name was Ralph Lipschitz, if you can imagine having that name. But what he did is he was a big proponent of the movies, right? So he got lost as a child by going to the movies and matinees and sneaking into reruns. And his goal in his life was to create a life that in turn relayed to the movie that he made in his mind, right? And I thought to myself, what a cool dynamic. Like, what if we can believe it, we can conceive it, we can achieve it, right? In that dynamic. So he wanted to create a life and a lifestyle based on the movies that he saw on the screen and bring it to life. And he created the Ralph Lauren empire because of that, right? And so to me, our minds are our biggest capsules of opportunity, but also they're the biggest capsules of our despair, right? If we don't hone in our mindset, if we don't discourage ourselves from thinking negative thoughts, we are screwing ourselves into the future or propelling us, to even further things. And I think that's the hardest thing. As you mentioned, the Marines was really about the mind. I mean, how important is your mind to your success with the body almost coming in after that, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think your mind is the biggest thing. And I think, you know, what I tell people is that what you see, what you hear, and what you say becomes who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So what you see, what you say, and what you hear, it's the same thing. It's like the people that you surround yourself by,
Yeah.
or the things that you consume, or the movies that you watch, or the books that you read. Like I think it's extremely important to consistently read good stuff, because if you're consistently on CNN or the news and you're just consuming all that negativity, it's draining. It's exhausting. Like why? Like just focus on all the positive things. And I think you're absolutely right is about that positive mindset. And when I invested in real estate, what I started realizing was there needs to be something even bigger. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when I started learning about private equity.
Mm.
How do you raise money, and how do you help other people build wealth? How do you become the Ray Dalios of the world, where they're making close to $2 billion in salary a year? How do you become the Grant Cardones, where he's raising to take down a $750 million multifamily unit? And it's easy. It's just because the general people, and right now it's so publicly, um, there's so much public information out there that it is easy to create a fund. And I think, that's what I want to contribute to the real estate industry, because most people don't know how to raise money, or most people don't know how to invest in real estate. But I was like, if you want to invest in real estate, or become an even better real estate agent or loan officer or investor, you need to invest even more, and you got to learn how to invest. And then now you got to pivot. Instead of syndicating deals and getting money together, how do you run a successful private equity fund? Either purchasing real estate or purchasing businesses and doing acquisitions and mergers. And it's easy now. They have attorneys that could whip up your legal documents, and all you got to do is just create your general partnership and limited partnership to build even more success.
Well, it's funny you said that because I was sitting down with a good friend of mine the other day. He's a hard money lender here in Arizona, real wealthy guy. I mean, he clears about 450,000 a month in profit, and all he does is he runs money. He'll loan out on a short term deal, 12 to 18% money, and he'll collect that back in 6 to 12 months. And what he said was really interesting. He says most people think in a myopic way, right? They think small. They think, oh, I'm going to buy this rental, which a lot of people should in the beginning to grow and learn the processes. Like you said, learn how to do it. But once you get to that point, you want to transition from being an entrepreneur to being an investorpreneur. And an investorpreneur uses money as chess pieces on the board to create those monetary hits in your life that are far superior than any entrepreneur can ever dream of. And I said, that's an interesting point. He says, yeah, I mean, basically, I use money to leverage people, and those people go out and create my dreams. Where a lot of people use their time, their resources, all of their hard work to create a small version of the potential they could have created by influencing and helping other people. I said, that's an interesting point.
Absolutely, especially now since banks are letting lend money out there. Like when close to 40% of the U.S. currency just got printed out in the last 24 months,
Yeah.
since the inflation rate is set 7%, more than it's ever been in the last 40 years or so. Like this is a time to be that investor. Learn how to run the fund. Learn how to have a skill set. If you have an Airbnb and you want to grow that fund out, help other people build it and educate them. Because when people start investing into a fund, or even start their own fund, they like a lot of students that I coach, when I'm teaching them about like pitching and learning about the 8 steps that I teach them, or you know, they always get intimidated because they're like, I'm going to raise $2 million. I was like, why not 20?
Yeah.
And they're just like, uh, because this is what I'm starting off with. And I'm like, well, you have the experience. You have 20 or 30 or $40 million in your own portfolio. Like, why are you scared?
Yeah.
Create the fund structure,
Yeah.
right? Start raising the money. Start helping more people build wealth. Teach them how to build a fund.
Yeah.
Because, like me and you both know, Michael, is that most investors, that invest in any type of real estate is that they're pretty lazy. So they don't want to do it anyway. So they need leaders like me and you to be able to run the projects, to be able to run those investment strategies or to do the mergers and acquisitions. And they're leaning on you to be that leader, or else they're going to give their money to good old Chase and get 2-3% on their returns. So I think,
Well, it's
pivoting in
funny.
different stages of your life.
I was talking to a nine-figure guy on the phone the other day, and I always love learning from people that have more than me. And he says, business is really like horse racing. He says, you're either the horse or you're the jockey. And sometimes you got to be both, and sometimes you got to be the horse, but most of the time you want to be riding the horse to victory. And he says, in order to become a jockey, you at one point in your life usually have to be the horse. And he says the most successful writers and the most successful in business are those willing to do it all to learn how it's done in the end. I said, that's actually an interesting point. It's true. Because sometimes if you're starting out, you are the horse, you're putting in sweat equity, you're working your ass off, trying to create something out of nothing. But eventually you transition your knowledge into how do I see success in others? How do I understand the proclivities that make people successful, bring success up in them, and in some way profit from their success on a larger scale? And I think a lot of people don't see business like that. They see it as like a solopreneur, right? I'm an island. I'm a person that can do it all on my own. And as we know, that shit doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. It's progressional stages in your life. Like when a lot of these influencers talk about it, they don't talk about the struggles,
Right.
but whoever hasn't got us started, or if they're in a like sticking point in their life, it's I want to share something else. Like I tell people, is that you should never rob of anybody of their experiences.
Mm,
So when you know that someone shouldn't do something and you know that they're going to fail, but they have their heart set on it, do not convince them otherwise. You should not rob them of that experience. That
mm.
experience is just like raising kids or my brothers or my sisters. I just take a step back and don't get offended by it. And I say they need to go through this journey. It's the hero's journey. So when you have this progression in your life in business or in investing, you're going through a stage in your life because most people, the first flip, they said, I wouldn't do it. You're going to lose money. And I went through the process. And if I didn't go through that hero's journey, I would not be the same guy that I was today. If I didn't join the Marine Corps, I would not be the same guy today. If I didn't start raising money for certain deals or do VRBOs or speak on stages, I would not be the same person. Some people may think that those are setbacks, but they're not.
I
They're
agree.
silent, like equity builders.
Totally. Now you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I look at every failure as a pit stop towards success. And when something really hits you, like, getting out of a 2.5 year relationship for me was really tough on my psyche. I didn't know how difficult it would be. But it got me to being physically fit. I said, you know what? Fuck this. I look way too fat, way too unattractive. I'm not doing the things I should be doing. I am going to look like Ryan Gosling in a year by hook or by crook. And so I made a pact with myself. And some of those strongest failures, I think, almost morph into your own personal successes. So I'm glad you brought that up because fear could be the ultimate motivator in creating your success. And failure almost is necessary to get to the next level because I think without failure, you don't reanalyze your life to get you to that next echelon, which a lot of people are afraid to do. I mean, what do you think about failure? Because I think one of the biggest things I've learned is if you're not failing, you're not thinking big enough. What do you think about that?
And I think when you fail wise, um, I like failing fast,
Yeah.
right? Failing fast, and it's okay to make big mistakes, but you need to learn how to adjust quick. I'm a big promoter of, let's so I call it dating. And
Mm,
it's funny because, I relate raising kids to being in relationships, to starting a business, to doing business partnerships is that you need to date the process because you don't know if you're going to like the person that, leaves their socks on the floor and it irritates the hell out of you. And that's a deal breaker. Or if you're that type of person in your whole life. So you have to date every single process. So if it fails, it's not really a failure. It's really seeing if it really works out for you because not everybody wants to be an extremely wealthy person. Not everybody wants to do the things that I want to do or do the things that you want to do, and that's fine. But date the process and see where you find your happiness.
I like that.
So
Date the
I
process.
love failing. Yeah, like I love failing. Like same thing when I get into a business, or how I recruited close to 60 employees for my restaurant 3 days before or 3 weeks before it was opening. I tell every employee, I say, date the company, date the managers, date us as an actual team and see if you like us. And if you don't
Mm,
like us, if you want to walk away the next day, then walk away. What I'm telling you is that we are an incredible team and our retention rate's pretty good. So that's what I tell people is date the process. Or when I find a business partnership, and let's say me and you, Michael, we get into, we raise a fund and we do, spec homes or something, right? And we're doing spec homes in Vail or Aspen. And what happens is that let's date the process. Let's do the first couple projects and see how we jive together. Because, I might get irritated because you're trying to push me to walk 5 miles with you every morning, or, so whatever it is. But, just date the entire process, because it's okay if it doesn't work, but then at least you know what you don't like. Like what people say is that majority of our minds is what we need to figure out what we don't know,
hmm.
rather than know that we things that we know that we don't know. But it's better to know those things that we don't know at all.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. I mean, failure and understanding what we don't like gets us closer to that road of figuring out what we do like. And that's the thing I learned within people is for me, and I wonder if you're this way, like there's only one quality I look for in partners. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how educated you are. I don't care your skin color, your creed, your belief, any of those things. I care about if you have the integrity and the belief in yourself to succeed. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter what industry that you put in, those self starters will go across the threshold. And the other people, which is 99% of the world, will come up with an excuse of why they didn't. And that's what I believe. At any age, you see that. You know what I mean?
Yes, I want to add something to that too, Michael. Is I think it's extremely important to be very consistent and provide some sort of results. It doesn't have to be
Mm,
extreme results, but when someone comes up to me and they say that they did all these fancy things, and I said, okay, well, what type of track record do you have? It doesn't have to be in the same category, but who are you as a person? Have you been that person that has legitimately screwed people over consistently?
right,
Or are you that type of person where you've always been a good person, but you're going through that hero's journey?
right.
And that's what I look at all the time. Like when people come up to me and they want to do a business partnership, or they want to, be part of my team, I want to know how consistent they've been in their past and what type of results have they given. Even if it's very little, that's all I care about is consistency and results, not about, because who you are today does not define who you're going to be in the future.
I believe in that 100%. And it's funny. I was trying to put my thoughts together, but the thought process I have is you hit on something really, really important, and I'm trying to put the right words together. But I think I lost it, but it was very intelligent, I promise you. But you hit on so many good components. Is it's not where you are today; it's where you're going in the future. And I almost it's that comparison of dating versus business because I love dating the process that you talked about. Just because something isn't right doesn't mean you didn't learn a lot from it and learn more about yourself. And I think that's really important. Like in anything in life, like let's take EXP for instance, because a lot of people listening in are part of EXP. What I always tell people is I said, this may not be for you. In fact, if you're not a self starter and a self creator and a self promoter, this is not for you. But give it a shot. If it doesn't work, what's the worst that can happen? You're exactly where you are right now. You've lost nothing except time and you learned more about yourself. And I think in any business opportunity, that small learning process, that small piece of I know more today than I knew yesterday will incrementally get you and your partners and your colleagues to that next level where you just didn't know before. And it makes me think about my point. In dating and in business, you can never expect something out of someone else that you yourself are not. So if you want to date a supermodel, you better physically look pretty damn good. If you want to be in business with a wealthy person and be treated as an equal, you yourself better be pretty damn wealthy. If you want to attract smart people, you yourself must be smart. And so I always say, look, I don't expect anything out of you that I haven't learned or tried to achieve within myself. But if I have achieved it, I know it can be achieved. Therefore, it can be achieved within yourself. So that's my
Well,
thought
so you
process.
so you brought up a couple good points that I want to like touch on. Is
Please do.
one is my mom said that every woman is beautiful.
Mm.
And it's the same thing for men wise. It's just how you put yourself together because
Mm.
people are attracted to different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you said that you have to be attractive, attraction comes in different ways.
I agree.
So, sometimes you got to do your hair different. Sometimes you got to dress different, but you should always be genuine and authentic. Just be yourself. Like for me, I'm such a direct person. I'm like, okay, let's do this. Or I'll ask direct questions. It's just who I am and it's what I feel comfortable with. Not everybody's going to rub, like, is not going to want to drink that cup of tea, but it's okay. But it is true. Everybody has their beauty. It's just about putting themselves together,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
One, and then the other thing that I want to talk about is so when you talk about success and all the listeners and all the people that are watching this show for the EXP team is like, look at people like Ramon,
Mm.
extremely young, and he was just driven, and he tested out the process and he committed to it. Now he's an extremely successful agent and leader. He's a very good leader. He's the type of person where most people could just sit there and you give him a call and he'll pick up and he'll genuinely care and take the effort to make you even more successful. And I think that's the great thing that I like about the EXP team too is that you guys are very giving. You guys genuinely do care, and yeah, it's a great team.
Well, I'm meeting with Ramon actually. We're doing a deal for CNBC and Bloomberg tomorrow. So I love Ramon and I respect him because he's even younger than me. So, I mean, his courage and his discipline is like, wow, it's impressive. But I wanted to open it up. We got like 6 minutes left. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or anything that they'd like to ask Vu or myself? Before we leave it. And Vu, thank you so much for help sharing your story, man. I love this stuff, and I really respect you as an entrepreneur because we've only touched on some of the amazing things that you accomplished. And what are some of the things that you want to accomplish here in the near future?
Really, I'm trying to lock on this partnership with a guy that's really good in the food industry, and we want to build $1 billion franchise,
Hmm.
and I want to consistently grow out 50 restaurants in the next 5 years and raise more money for real estate because it's the easiest money you could actually build, and consistently just educate people. Like I want to educate the real estate industry about investing, about starting
Hmm.
your first Airbnb or VRBO or doing your corporate rentals and collecting $10,000 checks a month and cash flowing $4,000 is the easiest money you could do. And I want to show people about entrepreneurship and going back to the core values of our country because I think that's extremely important. So that's what I really want to accomplish this year. So that's going to be fun.
Lisa has a great question. Have you written a book? And if not, what is your favorite go to motivational book?
Go to motivational book. I like this. There's so many good books out there. Like there's Atomic Habits or there's Emotional Intelligence. A really good one for everybody that's watching right now, and if you guys are agents or any type of sales, is Never Eat Alone. You need
Mm,
to read that. That is such a
never
good
eat
book.
alone.
Never Eat Alone. Yeah, so I think
Have
those
you
are the
ever
books.
read Miracle Morning?
Oh yeah, I have. Uh-huh.
What did you think of it?
So I think it's good. With me, I like the 10x method too.
Yeah,
So,
10X is dope. Have you ever read
um,
Alice Schroeder's The Snowball, the story of Warren Buffett?
no, I haven't.
Oh man, I mean it goes deep into his childhood. And I mean for I bet you're like me. I mean, I love reading biographies on extremely successful people because I think there's so many nuggets that you can pull from their successes that are so applicable to our lives.
Yeah, and to answer your question, I am. You're holding me accountable because I'm supposed to write my book. It's called "Leading with Legacy: How to Create Legacy Through Leadership."
Hmm, I like that. And Lisa has another question. What is the name of your restaurants?
So I'm working with Everbowl. So it's an actual franchise that was started with Jeff. So we got
Who's
Justin and
Jeff?
Alex that they're.
Tell people
Um,
who don't.
so Yeah, so Jeffen is an extremely successful person. They have close to 50 stores opened up for Everbowl. And so I'm one of the guys that's developing Colorado. So we're planning on hitting 30 stores. Another one called I Heart Mac and Cheese,
Hmm.
where it has amazing macaroni and cheese and delicious grilled cheese sandwiches. So it's kind of like that build your own. And we're still looking for more franchises because it's not how much money you make on your day to day operations, it's how much money you make on the sale. So we're
Hmm.
looking to sell our entire portfolio in the 5 or 6 years, anywhere between 11 to 15 times the multiplier. So we're looking about 100, 150 million. So yeah, those are the two restaurants right now, and there's more to come.
That's very exciting. And Lisa also says, read Lee Iacocca's life story. That's good as well. He was a
Thanks.
interesting figure. So
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is we got 2 minutes left. If you do encapsulate what you've learned today and what you want to tell others, let's say in a quote or just a lasting saying or something that you want to leave the audience with, what do you think that would be?
I would say take the time to build core values for yourself, your family, and the network that you're a part of,
Hmm.
because that's what's going to inspire you and keep you waking up in the morning. So whatever those values are, they might be health or they might be contribution. Just Google up what values are because words to me are so powerful. And sometimes people say words, but they don't know what they're defined. But find what your core values are for you. And I would sit down with your family if you have kids and a wife or a husband. Figure out what those core values are because it's what's going to drive you to do even more.
I love that. I love that. And Anne Wong, who is one of my real estate partners, had a great little end of things. She says, excellent discussion. I missed the beginning. My husband was born in Vietnam and grew up in Denver, but he's Chinese and he grew up with a single mother in the restaurant business. So, cheers to you and your family's success. And let's create a legacy together, my friend, and go out and kick ass.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. We'll see you guys
All
next
right.
week. Bye.